The father and stepmother of 10-year-old Sara Sharif have been found guilty of her murder. Sara was found with dozens of injuries at the family's home in Surrey last year. Judith Reed from the Crown Prosecution Service has been speaking outside the Old Bailey.
At the heart of this trial was Sara Sharif, a happy, outgoing and lively 10-year-old girl who was cruelly abused and murdered by the two people closest to her. We have all seen Sara's smile shine out from the photos of her, but everyone involved with this case will always remember that utterly horrendous injuries and brutal treatment she received in the weeks leading up to her death. We cannot begin to imagine the suffering she went through in her own family home.
Well, months before Sara's death, the County Council in Surrey closed an investigation into the family 6 days after a referral by her teachers. The teachers had spotted bruises on Sara's eye and under her hijab. Joanna Nicholas is a safeguarding consultant. Joanna, this is another case which prompts all sorts of questions about child protection. Can you tell us from your professional point of view what you make of what happened to Sara?
Hello, Jane, you're right, it absolutely does. I struggle when I hear people describe this little girl as happy and lively. From what we know so far, her life was horrific. She wasn't a happy and lively little girl. She was a little girl who, from her birth, terrible things happened to her, whether as a result of domestic abuse or terrible things being done to her as well. And what we can't do is preempt. There's a report that will come out, which is a statutory review that's done in these terrible circumstances. I guess it's going to say, yet again, there is an awful lot of learning for all of the agencies involved and also family. Do something about it. If you're worried about somebody in your family, do something about it. And there will be a lot of learning for all the agencies too.
The people who are guilty are the monstrous father and stepfather. I think we all absolutely acknowledge that. They will both, I'm sure, go to prison for a very, very long time. But there were other people who, as you say, as you hinted at, could have done something and didn't. And there were teachers who did spot the bruises. They did do the right thing. They referred it. And the County Council then closed this investigation. Do you understand why that happened?
I think, just to be clear, it was stepmother, not...
Yes, I apologise.
Yes. Well, again, I can't preempt what the report is going to say, but what is really important to be clear about is that none of this is trying to get out of blaming anybody, Jane, but what we need to understand is how these systems work. So if any agency has a concern, they make the referral to Children's Social Care, who are always the lead agency in child protection. But if Children's Social Care makes the decision to close a case, remembering this is a child, not a case, then if the other agency doesn't agree, there is a very clear process they should follow. So responsibility lies with everybody. We want to find somebody to blame, because when you hear about something so horrific, but everybody has a part to play, and everybody needs to learn from these absolutely horrific things that happen to these children time and time again.
She was home educated. I mean, just to be blunt about it, obviously not every child who's home educated is in any way vulnerable, but would that flag a concern to you?
Yes, it is a very common finding in reviews, and I've led an awful lot of these reviews when children have died in terrible circumstances. As you say, there are many people who home educate their children, and there are no concerns at all, and they do them for very good and legitimate reasons. But absolutely, if there are concerns about a family, those concerns should increase. And we know that there's been a significant increase in children being home educated. And I put that in inverted commas because, again, some will be for very worrying reasons. And we don't have the legal framework around those children that allow sight of those children. And we've seen so many situations where horrific abuse has gone on for too long because nobody's seeing those children. It is something that this government says they're going to look at, as previous governments have done, but there's very little weight around it at the moment.
And there were neighbours in the area in Woking who did hear things. And we've all got neighbours, and we all hear noises. And most of us, if we're honest, are very, very wary about doing anything. It's not our business. This is Britain. It's what goes on behind closed doors, up to a point, is still considered a private matter. Do we need to change all that?
We absolutely do, Jane. I spend quite a lot of my time interviewing people who have been involved in a situation where a child has died in terrible circumstances, and so many people are frightened to do anything. And all these people come out of the woodwork after the child has died. And when I'm interviewing those people, I say, "Did you think to tell anybody?" And people so often say no because I'm only a dot dot dot. Now, professionals cannot make anonymous referrals to children's social care, but members of the public can. And understandably, people are worried about doing it. But which is worse, the fear of that, or finding out afterwards what has happened to a little girl like Sara Sharif and the guilt that will stay with you forever if you didn't do something about it?
To be clear, then, you can ring up the authorities, can you, or contact them in some other way? You can drop in, send an email. You will be forever anonymous. Nobody will ever know.
It depends if you give your name. If you don't give your name and you say, I live in this block of flats, but I don't want to tell you who I am because I'm absolutely terrified of this couple and what might be going on in there. And I'm frightened of the repercussions for me. But this is what I hear and this is what I see. Now, of course, the weight that is given will not be the same as the weight of somebody who says, I'm so and you can come and talk to me about it. Or someone says, I'm a health visitor, I'm ringing you in a personal capacity because I live in that block of flats. So great, because unfortunately people do make malicious referrals to children's social care and the police all the time as well.
But do
So
they?
they
I mean,
have,
how often
oh
does that
yes, they
happen?
do.
They
Oh,
do.
that it
Okay.
happens all the time, particularly when couples split up and it's acrimonious. All sorts of allegations and counter allegations are made. And a lot of them, no, not often, I can't say that, but sometimes they will be malicious and they will have no basis. So social care and the police constantly have to weigh up the veracity and the validity of where those referrals are coming from. So anonymous referrals may be given less weight, but that doesn't mean that you shouldn't do something about it. Of course not.
It is interesting that right at the start there, Joanna, you said you struggle with Sara Sharif being described as happy, and I've heard it described as sassy today.
I know.
It's an odd, both are quite odd adjectives to choose in the diabolical circumstances. How does a child conduct themselves, do you know, when they are the victim of abuse of this nature? What should we look out for?
Well, the thing is that children are, if they are frightened into submission and they're terrified and they are told, if you do anything, this is going to happen to you. You go to school and you look happy and you look cheerful. You develop children, some children, they can develop that front because they know the consequences if they don't do that. And so children become very, very good actors and performers because they're terrified of the consequences. But we have to have professionals who are better. I'm not talking about the individuals in this school, I'm talking about generally. When we know there have been allegations of domestic abuse, we know there have been all sorts of allegations, and this little girl had been known to children's social care since just after she was born. We need to look behind the surface. It's a bit like the police when they do visits, and they have a term that they use, which is children seen safe and well. Now, what that actually means is they're not covered in, this is often around domestic abuse cases, seen and safe and well. What they mean is they're not covered in blood and they're not screaming. They're not safe and well. They're living in a home where there's domestic abuse. So we have to get beneath that veneer that children develop because they know the consequences if they don't.
Joanna, can I ask a quick question about how a case can be closed? What is the remit? What are the criteria for a case that has been reported being closed down?
So when it's felt that the level of concerns that have been investigated have that things have been put in, that either it's found that those concerns weren't thought to be genuine, or if it's thought that those concerns have been addressed and the issues are no longer there and they feel that the child is no longer at risk of abuse.
But the child would always have been seen before a case could be closed.
Yes, if children's social care opened the case and they're working with the family, yes, a child would always have to be seen.
Right, gosh, there are some questions to be asked then, aren't there?
Joanna,
So many.
yeah, I mean it's deeply depressing, and I've had conversations of this nature with you before, and I'm very afraid to say I suspect I might have them again. because this issue never seems to ever really go away. But thank you very much for your help and expertise this afternoon. So the news is that the father and stepmother of 10-year-old Sara Sharif have been found guilty of her murder. Her uncle, Faisal Malik, was found guilty of causing or allowing her death, and sentencing is due to take place next week.